Okay. My name is Lorenzo COF, and I will be attempting to explain why it is erroneous to say that violence in a video game can lead to violence outside in the real world. You've all seen on the news and on the internet that this school shootings and heard of school shootings and things like that. I'm gonna define in this argument that video games as any recreational software that, in this case, allows you to recreate acts of violence. So pretty much M-rated games. And violence we're going to define as any act that includes one person directly or indirectly causing harm to another person, group, or groups of people. My first point is that in a video game, you're essentially in a world detached from reality. In the sense that lots of these video games are set in fantastic worlds that you can do pretty much anything in. To use a popular current game, Grand Theft Auto 5 just came out, and you can do many different things in there that you can't do in reality, such as storm into a military base and hijack a helicopter. Things like this would be highly improbable for any normal person to even attempt. Not to mention the AI in these, or artificial intelligence in these games, the other computer artificial characters in the game don't react in similar ways to humans, so it's hard for a person to really equate a video game AI to a human individual. So that being said, I'm going to move on to my second claim, which is that video games are rated by a group called the ESRB. It is up to the individual to determine whether or not it is suitable for them or their children to play these games. Video games are rated based on their content, suitable for certain age groups. I'm gonna, quoting the ESRB, the teen game and M-rated game. A teen game is generally suitable for ages 13 and up, for violence, suggestive themes, crude humor, minimal blood, simulated gambling, and/or infrequent use of strong language. They define violence as scenes involving aggressive conflict, maybe bloodless dismemberment. These scenes are more than likely physical altercations, which is fighting and things like that. But when you move on to mature rated content, which is 17 and up, which at most retailers requires photo identification to prove that you are of age to purchase it, it contains intense violence, blood and gore, sexual content, and/or strong language. And they define the intense violence as may involve extreme and/or realistic blood and gore, weapons, and depictions of human injury and death. These things are more for adults and not impressionable children. All these things are stated clearly on the box with descriptions of why they have attained this rating. And as I stated before, they require photo identification. It's shown in a research that the ESRB did, that 70% of people regularly check a game's rating before making a purchase. 85% of parents are aware of the ESRB rating system, yet only 41% never allow their children to play M-rated games. So it seems that the ability for a child to play these games is based on of whether their parent is allowing them to play it. Having said that, I'm going to move on to my third claim. The fact that violence of these types are usually performed by individuals who have prior either mental conditions or things like that. It's said by Christopher J. Ferguson, PhD, that school shooters have generally been found to have a history of antisocial personality traits, suffer from mental illnesses such as depression or psychosis, and tend to obsess about how others, or society views them or have wronged them. So saying that I believe it is wrong to say that violence in video games is the sole cause of violence in reality. And that's where I'm going to end it.
All right, Lorenzo, you identified the claim, but the proposition is phrased a little bit awkwardly. It's not quite a negative, but it's an erroneous conclusion to believe this. Yes, it is erroneous. That's a little awkward, like I said. There's obviously some controversy on the subject because you mentioned a few cases where the issue of whether or not people played video games comes up in regard to people who've done these mass shootings. So I can see that there's controversy on this. There's no layout of what the secondary structure is going to be, though, so there's no preview in the introduction. And so we're going to, hopefully your audience is listening carefully, because if they're listening carefully, they won't get lost. You do signpost the secondary points. The problem is when you signpost those points, they don't usually make claims. The first two especially don't make claims. They really just summarize information on the subject. Both the first and the second points in your argument really spend a lot of time giving us background on people who play games, the fantasy, what kinds of things go on in the games, what the guidelines and rules are about buying or purchasing or renting the games, and whether or not the parents are watching out on those things, which is all background information, but it doesn't address your claim that these games have no effect. It just tells us what the context in which this argument is taking place is. The first time that I get an inference that directly applies to your main proposition is your third claim, which argues that there are really other contributing causes here, that the kids had psychological problems before. You did have a good piece of testimony evidence on that, but that really feels like this is where your argument is starting and then you finish. So almost everything else is background information. If you're telling me that people don't learn or become inured to violence because artificial intelligence responses of characters in the games don't respond like real world, that's an assertion. Where's your proof that that's the case? You explain that it doesn't happen, but that doesn't mean that I don't learn that kind of stuff. I learn a lot of stupid stuff from TV. I'm sure the world is full of people who are ignorant because of something that they encountered in a movie. Just because it's ridiculous doesn't necessarily mean that people don't believe those kinds of things or they don't act on that basis. That's the thing that you needed to make the argument about. All right, thank you.